Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkapolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Hi, thanks for joining us again on the Fitness and Beauty Roundup. We're back with Brandi talking about her carb cycle dieting. And I hate to call it dieting, but it's really more like a food plan that you follow, because you seem to follow it all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so on the carb cycle, you said maybe twice a week, you will recarb. Now, let's start with why you do that. What does that do? Because obviously there's something happening when you're eating just the veggies and protein that you feel requires you to recarb. So what happens during that time that requires you to recarb?
What happens biologically speaking is our glycogen stores get low. And once you tap your glycogen stores out, your body will start to use muscle for fuel, and it really doesn't like to do that. It's not homeostatic state for it to be in.
Okay.
So for your brain needs carbs too. Your brain does need some starches. Right. So I do it for that reason, and I also do it because I don't want to be counterproductive in my diet and training. I want to be able to my body to function properly enough to process the fat, burn the fat, take in the carbs, and use them in a healthy way. The reason I do 2 days a week is because personally that's what's worked for me the best, but also lots of studies have shown that if you go, like on a lot of popular diets, they'll have you go 2 weeks without carbs, and it's just not good for your brain. Okay. It's not good for your brain. I've done the 7 days before, and I get forgetful, and I'm forgetful to begin with, so it just makes it way worse. I get forgetful. I'm kind of slow in my thought processes. Your brain needs carbohydrates, but it doesn't need an overload of sugar and the combination of fats and carbs together.
Oh yeah, that is deadly.
And that's the worst. Yeah. So Wednesdays I'll do maybe 100, 150.
Which is what?
It's oatmeal in the morning.
Okay.
35 to 40 grams at a time, so that it's easy for my body to break down. Usually oatmeal in the morning, it's easy for me. Sometimes I'll do a bowl of cereal, like, Total, something simple, like with very low sugar in it. Okay. Cheerios is one of the best, as long as like the plain Cheerios.
Gotcha.
But if I do something like cereal or oatmeal, I'll always do it with a shake, like a protein shake, so that I get the balance of protein and carbs.
Okay.
So I start with the oatmeal. I'll usually do a sweet potato or two.
Okay.
And I may have some beans with my chicken serving for the afternoon, or fish, whatever I'm having. And then for dinner, maybe sushi, something like that.
A little bit of rice or something.
Yeah, a little bit of rice with the protein.
Okay.
But it's usually sweet potatoes, oatmeal, maybe cereal. On random occasion, like on Sundays, I'll do a few more carbs. I might do 250 or something. And that seems like a lot. When you go all week and you haven't eaten carbs, 250 will really fill you up. If you don't believe me, ask anybody I've gotten ready for a show. They're stuffed on Sundays. But Sundays, sometimes I'll make like whole wheat pancakes, whole wheat waffles.
Gotcha.
Things like that. Maybe French toast with egg whites.
Okay.
So, I'm still getting kind of what people would consider a cheat food.
Right.
But it's still, not flour, like white bleached flour.
And you're keeping track of the amount.
And I'm keeping track of the amount. I'm not doing, a full bowl of pasta at any one time. Gotcha. In fact, I've found that, people, and there's plenty of studies about this. I read a great article last week that had they had taken a man and a woman to lunch on a lunch interview for a job. And it was just, they were showing the differences between men and women on interviews, on lunch interviews and food slotted interviews specifically. And men always do better because they typically choose the meat, vegetable option on the menu, whereas women have been more notorious to choose pasta, potatoes, things like that. And the overload of consumption slows down your thought processes. And so I've even noticed if I eat too many carbs at one time, I'll get a headache. I might feel sluggish, because my digestive system is going, what are you doing to me? Why am I having to break down all this food at one time?
Right.
So try not to do that.
So, and blood sugar is probably taking a few
Blood
dips.
sugar is taking
Doing
it
up and down and kind of.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got insulin kicking in and kind of saying, okay, we got to move this around. So it's taking it in and it's coming back up and down, trying to manage that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would throw off your thought process.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
Instead of being more steady, if you're eating more like a veggie and protein.
Right, but also you've got that pool of blood in your stomach to the system trying to break down this food instead of your brain.
Gotcha.
So can kind of slow you down a little bit.
Okay. Wow. And then you do this, 2 days a week to restore glycogen. And that's because you're working out. You're not just working out 2 or 3 days a week. You're working out 5 or 6 days a week, I'm guessing.
Typically,
usually, a combination of weights and cardio.
On a good week, if I've got enough time, Yeah. I typically will do, 4 to 5 cardio sessions at anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And sometimes I'll get an extra long, maybe trail run or something in.
Right.
And then every muscle group in. So I'm getting 4 weight training sessions a week.
Gotcha.
But they may last 30 minutes. It doesn't take long,
But you're getting in there and you're working hard.
Right.
You're draining glycogen stores with the workouts.
I am draining glycogen stores, right. So if I would lower those carbs on weeks that I don't train as hard. Like if this week has been kind of crazy and hectic at work, so I've gotten in 2 really good workouts so far. I'm going to get in 2 more, maybe Saturday, Sunday, 1 each day. And so Sunday I may not eat as much as I would normally.
Gotcha. You adjust down for the activity level.
Adjust down for the activity level.
You're adjusting your carbs, so you're not adjusting protein.
Nope.
You're still eating the same amount of veggies, but you're adjusting the starchy stuff.
That's right.
So that seems to be the trigger food for fat loss because the protein maintains muscle.
Right.
The veggies are for nutrients and for digestion and enzymes, like you said. The carbs seem to be for energy, but only amount of energy that you seem to need.
That's right. Now, one of a trainer that we know in town is getting ready for a triathlon. So she would clearly need to take in a lot more carbs on a daily basis.
Right. Because of her training.
Than
and
we
make
are.
Sure she's storing it for the race.
Right. But for the average person, and I've done before also, and it works well, where I may do 50 carbs a day. Which still equates to about the same amount per week.
Right.
So, I may do 50 per day, but I'll do them in the morning, maybe a bowl of oatmeal with some protein powder in it or something, or maybe if I want to have sushi dinner with a friend and it's not on a Wednesday, whatever.
Right.
But they're still small amounts. I would not do the 100 to 150 every day.
Right. You're not doing the bottomless bowl of pasta.
No, never.
Ever? Okay. So even if you have a cheat meal, you basically would call that. Let's say you went out on a whim.
My cheat meals are usually a burger.
Okay. A burger.
I want like a burger, yeah.
Right. You want
I want
meat.
food. If I'm I want food that I wouldn't normally order.
But if you had some of the fries, you ate the bun, obviously you're counting that as a replenishment of your carbs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's managing the starch, but your protein requirements pretty much stay the same daily. The veggies are there because of nutrition. And so the carb seems to be the trigger and you're able, that's obviously not low calorie diet. You're eating enough protein, you're getting a lot of veggies, you're getting a good amount of calories.
Right.
So is that what helps you maintain
the
muscle without losing the weight you don't want to lose, basically?
Right.
So you're losing you're focusing on the weight you want to lose, which is the fat.
Right.
So the carb seems to trigger how much fat loss you have.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, and even if you think about, so for every, and some people don't know this, but some people do, that for every gram of protein you ingest, you get 4 calories, right? For every gram of carb, you get 4 calories, and for every gram of fat, you get 9 calories. So if I'm only eating 150 grams of protein,
right,
it's how many calories?
That's
650?
650, yeah.
So that's still only 650 calories. So I've got to get it in. If I don't get it at 150, sometimes most of the time I go over 150, but I'm ingesting more than 650 calories a day because we're going to account for the fat that's in it, and the protein.
We're just talking about the protein.
Right. But that's just important because people go, goodness, that's a lot of protein, but it's really not many calories. No. So you're getting a lot more bang for what you're doing than
And you actually
poorly
feel full.
Right, and you feel full. And you know, it's important on those and those high protein diets like that. I don't consider it high protein. High protein I would consider 300 grams a day. But, you know, most nutritionists would say 150 is a high amount of protein. They also don't carry around six-pack abs and squat their body weight.
No.
So I would always say, well, you know, I want to see the proof is in the pudding kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But that being said, that, you know, I'm going to have to ingest enough vegetables also to get my calories to where they need to be. Sub 1,200 calories is not a good place for people to live. And a lot of places teach that, and it's not safe, it's not healthy. You get sick, you break down, you can't work out. And so I don't want to lead the misconception that, you know, I only eat 650 calories a day, because I do not. I typically end up somewhere around 12, 13, maybe 1,400. So, and that comes from the other fats that's in the protein I eat. On those lower carb days, I always have either a filet, which has got a lot of fat in it.
Yes.
Good fat. Or salmon, a good heavy portion of salmon, sometimes 2 portions of salmon. You know, you've got 6 ounces of salmon is 18 grams of fat. So there's another, you know, over 150 calories.
That's 9 calories per gram.
Yeah.
So it's twice as many calories per gram as the protein.
But it's got all the good stuff in it. It's not like eating, you know, 18 grams of fat from a fatty ground round burger.
Gotcha.
Or cheese or something like that.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, I got to ask one more question on this. Alcohol. So how do you fit that in there? Is that a cheat day only? Is that something you have when you want to, or certain kinds? I mean, how do you monitor or gauge that?
I try to stay away from beer. I really like beer.
I'm with you.
And I like high gravity beer.
Yes.
Dense beer.
But it puts the weight on.
It does put the weight on, and I notice a difference in my body almost immediately. I mean, it's like the next 2 days I can tell that I had 2 beers. So I try to stay away from that stuff. But, you know, once or twice a week, I'll have a high-gravity beer. And I do try to do it on my higher calorie days, like the Wednesdays or Sundays. Or maybe I'll do that high-calorie day on a Saturday if I've got a function to go to or something. You can move it.
You time it.
You time it, yeah. But what I try not to do is, you know, go have a really big dinner with 4 glasses of wine. I mean, I couldn't anyway. I fall out of the seat. But, you know, try to keep those drink limits to 2.
Gotcha.
Try to keep them to 2. And that's for my body. I mean, I know that for me. You know, everybody's different. But alcohol, it's like an unnecessary calorie. So, you know, I try to keep it low.
By unnecessary, you mean we can't burn it as energy.
Right. Yeah. You metabolize them for every glass of wine. It metabolizes like 9 grams of fat. So 9 grams of not so good fat. But now that being said, it is true that a glass of red wine for you, you know, a lot of doctors will say 1 a day is fine. And I'm not saying it's not. I know for me what
But
is
you count
good.
it. You got to watch
but I
it.
count it.
Count it. So and
Yes.
and since there isn't fat in wine, to explain that, you're saying your body converts it to fat in order to then burn it.
To process
Before
it.
it can process or burn it as fuel.
Right.
For it to be burned off, it has to be first converted into fat. It can't be burned as alcohol for fuel. It's got
There's too many processes to break down, basically, in the
for
alcohol.
your metabolism to break it down. So it has to be converted. That's why it turns into fat. So the fat in your steak isn't what's turning to fat. It's the starch and the wine or the beer that converts into fat in our bodies. And so as opposed to the misconception of eating fat sticks to makes you fat. It's
I've gotten ready for shows before where every night I have either a piece of salmon or a fillet. I mean, there's the kind of proof.
And we've seen your show pictures. You're very lean. You're very
well,
lean.
but there's the proof. You know that it's those good fats going into my system.
Natural fats.
It's
not a Slim Jim.
Right.
It's not a big hunk of sausage or salami. It's
and that's kind of the brain thing too. You know, your brain needs fats also.
Of course.
And so, you know, people who do no fat diets, it's incredibly unhealthy, and it's just not sustainable.
Yeah.
You can't
hormone
do
production, nervous system, all that. Brain is fat. So basically, essentially, cholesterol. Great. Wow. That's awesome. So now one last question, and then we'll move on to something else. So during the week, would you say some of the fat that you eat is also converted into some glycogen for your muscles?
It can't be converted glycogen, I don't think. I'm not the mad scientist, for sure.
Okay. I know, from what I understand, it takes longer.
Yeah, it takes longer.
So as a carb would go right to it.
Right, that's correct. Your body stores fat longer than it will carbs.
So if you had to break down fat to restore glycogen, it's just not as simple of a process. It's a little more.
No, it requires some high metabolic activity.
And probably a lot of sleep.
And some good sleep. Yeah, some good sleep and a lot of balance. But that's one of the things that, as people who get ready for contests, it's hard to get athletes to understand that, we're trying to get rid of the fat in your system so we don't put too much more of it back in.
Right.
Because a lot of athletes, there's some coaches believe that you can have a full-on cheat day, which is whatever you want to eat before a contest. My coach would probably fall out on the floor if she heard somebody tell me that. And of course, I follow the same philosophy. Because it's like that, if you're trying to get all the gas out of your car, you don't keep putting it in there.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You're just going to
keep refilling the tank.
Exactly. So that's the difference between the good and the bad fats, eventually, I'm going to have to cut out that salmon, a couple weeks before, that filet, a couple weeks before. But that's when you're really down to the wire and you're trying to drop that last little bit of body fat.
Now, most people, that's an extreme
That's
point.
an extreme, yeah.
So most people
are never going to get there.
Never
going to need to go there. Yeah. No, but they don't need to feel like they can't enjoy a good filet.
Right. No,
and
that's
a glass
good
of
whole
wine.
Piece of meat. I mean, as far as that's unprocessed. It's been cut.
Right.
But no one's ground it up. No one's processed. No one's put anything added anything to it.
And I would recommend too that I've noticed a difference with myself and how I feel purchasing grain or grass-fed
beef and so forth.
Beef, and cage-free, hormone-free chicken.
And
eggs. Big difference in eggs. Yes, a big difference in how I feel. Yeah. So I would encourage people, to buy that stuff local.
The fatty acid lipid profile.
And it doesn't offset your hormones because you're not ingesting artificial hormones. So, that's a whole nother topic. But
yeah, I could go off on that myself.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, Brandi. We're going to have her back one more time for a few more questions. So check back. Thanks.
Talkapolis, the social media TV network for your city.